even if he seems to leave her to her lone strength, again, lone strength. Even if he seems to leave her. Now, of course, Narada is again cautious. He says, God may seem to leave her to her lone strength, but He is there all the while. He is always there. He is always there. But does He leave her at all? Can He leave her at all? He won't leave her at all. What is possible is we may forget Him. We may not recognize His help. We may not be prepared to receive His help. But He is not going to leave her. There is a certain obligation on our part to receive the help which He gives. What He wants us to do. There is a certain obligation. That obligation means we have to do the necessary qualifying yoga to receive His help. By simply saying, yes, He'll come and help me, it doesn't work. We have to do. We have to put ourselves in His hand and receive His help. Let Him do His work unhindered in you, as Sri Aurobindo says in that book, The Mother. Let her do her work in you unhindered. That is required. Therefore, it seems, even though all falters and falls and season end, and the heart fails, this is what we saw last time, and the heart fails, and only a death and night. So, in the stupendous night, only death is there and night. That is what we'll see later on also, when Savitri is meeting death, and she has overpowered death, and death wants to retreat and go back into night. But night refuses to take him back. Night refuses to take him back, and therefore he stands helpless. It's like saying on the chessboard, when there is checkmate, complete checkmate, the only option for the king, he cannot move at all anywhere horizontally, is to go up. That's the only option, you see. And the heart fails, and only death and night, God given her strength, can battle against doom. Her strength, her, is important. Because it is Savitri alone who can do that. Soul, she alone. Will I be in a position to receive that God-given help and conquer death? Sorry, Mr. Deshpande, it is not for you. It cannot be. It cannot be. It cannot be. It is for her. God-given strength is for her alone. I may like to receive it, but no. She is marked uniquely. Soul, alone, apart. That is the reason why he is constantly repeating. She is uniquely for that purpose here. Not any other human being, not any other soul, not, of course, not even God. Nobody. She alone. Her strength. He keeps on emphasizing that aspect. The central role, the pivotal role of Savitri in the entire process of the manifestation of the higher powers of the spirit, her. God given her strength, even on a brink where death alone seems close, and no human strength can hinder or can help. Death alone seems close. Now, this is absolutely prophetic. This phrase is absolutely prophetic. Sri Aurobindo has written this thing in 1950, November 1950, as I was saying, mid-November 1950, this particular passage. And It is prophetic in the yoga of transformation of the mother. He is talking of the situation she will face just a few years ahead. In the mid-1960s, death alone seems close. She is face to face with death there all the while. So the entire prophetic thrust has come in this particular phrase. Even on a brain where death alone seems close. Seems again. See, he is very cautious, very particular also. Seems close, seems to live, all those things are there, seems to live. Because he has already asserted that it is God-given strength. If Savitri is able to receive that God-given strength, then that seem can go away. It is not required. If she can establish that God-given strength in her, then the seem has no place there. God-given strength, death alone can close. What is a God-given strength? Mother is facing this situation alone along with death. And finally she says, Lord, whatever you will, succor to go. Whatever thou willest, whatever thou willest, whatever thou willest. She has totally surrendered herself to his will. Surrendered not only mentally, not only vitally, but down to the physical cells. The physical cells are telling, Lord, whatever you want us of, we shall be that. That is the God-given strength they are going to receive. That is the moment they are going to feel. And therefore, naturally, no human strength can hinder or can help there. Think not to intercede with the hidden will. Narad has seen that hidden will. See, he has that drishti, that vision, that sight. What the hidden will is behind the birth of Savitri. He has that sight, you see. Intrude not twixt her spirit and its force, but leave her to her mighty self and wait, is what we have been saying. So, it is the mighty self of Savitri who has to come forward and confront fate. It is necessary that it happens, and it will happen. Well, so Narad has done his job. He has delivered the message. He came with the word of fate, announcing the death of Satyavan 1 year after the marriage. He came specifically for that purpose. The machination of God. You see, in the Greek drama, this is a very familiar way of introducing a new element in the development of the drama. So this is what we have got, ex machina, you see. Narad's coming here. Suddenly he comes, walks away, and finally makes an announcement. He's nowhere, anywhere at all, you see. Now, obviously, his job is done, and he is in a kind of hurry to go back. He does not want to wait even for a second there to be questioned by anybody. What are you talking? What is all this? Please explain. No. He wants to quickly quit, go away, you see. He spoke and ceased and left the earthly scene. See how rapidly the poet is also moving. He spoke for 3 hours, almost like that, and stopped and left the earthly scene. He is back now to his palace in paradise. Away from the strife and suffering of our globe, he turned towards his far off blissful home. Well, he came for a specific purpose to deliver the word of faith. He has done that, and now he is back on his way to the blissful home in paradise in Vaikuntha, the home of the realm of Vishnu, where he stays, towards his far off blissful home. So now far off is obviously in contrast to the strife and suffering. You see, what we have here on this globe is strife and suffering. And far off from here means that blissful home is never touched by strife and suffering. That's the implication. It is immune to that. It cannot be affected by strife. It's not there at all, you see. Blissful home. Now, the question is, if it is a blissful home, then why did it take the trouble of coming here to this world of strife and suffering and experience this anguish here? What joy is in it, you see. Why should he come here at all, you see? He could as well, he is happy there, forget about his earth. Who cares about his earth? He did not come at all, you see. But he has a concern. It is a divine concern which brings here. Yes, this is a world of strife and suffering. What the Gita says, Anityam Asukham, this transient and sorrowful world. This transient and sorrowful world. This is what we have got, the Gita says. The battlefield, Krishna is saying, this transient and sorrowful world, you see. He has a concern for this transient and suffering world. Why? The concern is the contrast between strife and suffering and blissful. There is a kind of a sharp contrast between what is there and what is here. Is this going to be always like that, strife and suffering? Can that bliss not come down here? Can that bliss not come down here? That is the concern. And therefore he comes here with that concern. Otherwise he could have forgotten about it. He could have been kind of indifferent. Okay, you suffer misery or whatever, die, whatever it is. But he has a concern that, look, this is the world of anguish, suffering, anityam, nasukham. But can it become nityam, sukham? Should it not become nityam and sukham, eternal and happy? Can it not be so? That is the concern of Narad. That is the greatness of Narad. And therefore, he takes pain to come here. And therefore, the process of transformation, the spiritual being with the spiritual body has to take a physical body here and walk into the palace. That is a great transition. And the mother says, this kind of a materialization is a very hard and difficult and painful process. It's not an easy process. Narad is undertaking that kind of a painful, is undergoing that painful for a cause. Because this strife and suffering of this globe should change, that is concerned, into bliss. Therefore, okay, let me see what I can do. And therefore he comes here, he brings that word of faith and delivers it. Well, that is his soul's concern. But Narad is also a bhakta, a great devotee. And he sees incarnate Savitri here on the earth. To be close to her for 3 hours on the physical plane is something exceptional. To be in physical contact with her in that sense, in the company of Savitri on the physical plane. It is the way of his offering to the Divine Mother. You are there, let me physically to go and approach her. So that is the concern of Narad, and therefore he does not mind undergoing to that process of transformation from the spiritual into the physical, the painful, difficult process, as the mother says. He doesn't mind because he's going to meet the Divine Mother here as the incarnate being. Meeting her in heaven, etc., is of a different kind. He is not much happy with that. He wants to see her physically here. See. A brilliant arrow pointing straight to heaven. So he's shooting out like an arrow now, straight to heaven, up. You see. No deviation, straight. The luminous body of the eternal seer, luminous body. Well, although he has taken the human body here, still it has that glow, the spiritual glow of the eternal seer. Now here we have eternal seer. The Revised Edition says ethereal seer. Ethereal seer. I think the whole thing simply goes down, pushed down, see, by changing eternal into ethereal. Revised edition, new edition of Savitri. New edition, 1993. The luminous body of the eternal seer. He is eternal, he is Chiranjiva, as what we call. Chiranjiva means eternal.
They couldn't read it, or what is the explanation why they will change it?
They're not giving any explanation, nothing is there. No. Just a pity. Even if it is there, you see, I mean, you publish as data separately, but don't change the text. Don't change the text, see. The luminous body, you see what a beautiful phrase, the luminous body of the eternal seer. What a line also. Now, the moment you say ethereal, even the rhythm gets upset. Even the movement gets upset, you see. Assailed the purple glory of the noon. You see again that noon. As I said, this is the crucial point. He is living at noon, straight up in the sky, and disappeared like a receding star. Well, in the noon, he is a star, you see, and obviously you can't see the star, so he has vanished into the glory of the sky. You see, disappeared, receding like a receding star, vanishing into the light of the unseen. But still a cry was heard in the infinite. He has gone back. What is remaining now is the echo, the rhythm, the sound of. But still the cry was heard in the infinite. And still to the listening soul on mortal earth, if we have got a listening soul, if we have got listening ears, we can still hear his voice. It is always there, it is present there, if we can manage that. In other words, if this had happened in the historical Aeonic ages, Narad's coming, Savitri's story is a legend which had occurred long ago in the early cycles of creation. Narad has gone back, and his voice, what he spoke, can still be heard by one who has that listening soul. One who has that listening. The poet of Savitri is hearing that voice. He is not imagining it. What Narad spoke, he is not imagining. He still keeps on hearing what Narad has sang. And it is that which is kind of transcribing simply. He is hearing it. It is not imagination. It is not a poetic creation. It is a concrete thing. The occult presence is there all the while of the sound. The poet of Savitri is hearing that, and he is simply mentioning it here, you see. It is not that somebody else is writing something like that, as an imagination, as a poetry. He is hearing. And still to the listening soul, means even now, although it happened long ago, eons ago, that sound, that Akasha Dhvani is present there. That Akasha Dhvani is present. And if you are perceptive to that, you can hear that sound even now. It is permanent there. Therefore, it is eternal. It is there, eternal. You see, it gets linked up with that. You see. Still to the listening soul on mortal earth, a high and far imperishable voice chanted the anthem of eternal love.